Joining us now, Republican Congressman Darrell Issa of California. He just returned from surveying the scene in the Gulf last night. Before we get into all the politics and policy of this, do you, when you visually have evaluated this and you talk to others, colleagues of yours that have, Congressman, are we actually responding on the ground in every possible way we can and dealing with the bureaucracy later, or is the bureaucracy still preventing the best, most rapid, most effective response on the coastline and in the Gulf?
Well, there's no question, Dylan, that the response is still ramping up, meaning the bureaucracy is still slow. There are resources that have not been brought to bear, that they're still talking about sourcing and getting here on the job 56 days in. So we could have done more sooner. Not all of it by any means can we blame on the government. Some of it is squarely on an industry that didn't know where the parts were that would help them fight this oil spill, and they say they're still sourcing them today. That's unconscionable.
Everybody, I think, given the opportunity, would do whatever they could to try to help this situation. But at the same time, it is very unclear to most people as to what their responsibility or their role in it is, whether you're a congressman or a trucker in the Midwest or a farmer out all the way in California. What do you feel you can do as the man who has a lot of authority in our country, forget all the rest of us? What can you do today, tomorrow, the next day to help improve the process of supervision, MMS, we can go down the list, to diminish the probability of these sort of events going forward?
Well, I think you said the most important thing is to make sure it never happens again. The second most important thing, and it's very close behind it, is to make sure we don't, in the short term, lose the resources necessary to provide our energy needs. So we have to get those 46 or so thousand people back to work that historically drill in deep water, but we have to do it in a safe way. That means finding ways to put them back to work while making sure they cannot puncture back into these high-pressure zones anytime soon, certainly not until government works out its own failures. And remember, government failed to differentiate between those who were doing it right and those who were doing it wrong. And I'm not going to say it's one company. Let's assume that one rig was doing it right and one rig was doing it wrong. MMS never really differentiated. Basically, everybody got a pass, and that cannot happen. The President's Commission, 6 months from now, needs to come out with real changes we can believe in. But in the meantime, we cannot lose those tens of thousands of jobs. Otherwise, it simply means that instead of 9-point-some, we'll be at 10-point-some% unemployment before you know it.
Yeah. I would say you just hit the nail on the head when it comes to our government. There are some corporations and businesses, special interests, groups, whatever you want to call them, who add real value in our country in a multitude of ways. And there are other corporations, groups, whatever you want to call them, who extract value from our country by manipulating the government to alter the rules of the game. And our government fundamentally does not differentiate between how it treats good groups and good corporations, if you want to call them that, who are value creating, and those who are value extracting and manipulate the government. How do we change that so that we actually are helping the groups that are creating value while monitoring and reducing those who are effectively cheaters and thieves?
We've got to fundamentally change Mineral Management Service. These 1,700 people who time and time again were shown to be dysfunctional by administration after administration, but never really changed. Secretary Salazar at least is talking about real change. We need to work with him to make sure that change is change that, in fact, will make them accountable and responsible, make sure that we are fail-safe in every part of what we do. Obviously, the collection safely for the crews, the collection safely for the environment, and oh, by the way, making sure we get every penny we're entitled to, because this is the people's resources, and 17+% of the money that's gained is supposed to go to the American people, and historically, much of it hasn't.
What do you say all the oil we're skimming out of the Gulf we give to the American people free?
Well, there's no question that that's a small amount compared to the damage, but we have to do more than that. We have to make sure that the American people are maximizing their resource, but maximizing it safely. This is a wake-up call. We didn't stop moon exploration because of Apollo 13, but we certainly wanted to make sure we learned from it, and we learned from it in a way that it would never happen again. We haven't learned in past disasters, including the one with BP up in Alaska where their pipeline failed, that these companies will cut cut corners, and that our oversight was not sufficient. When the BP's rusty old pipeline fractured, we should have known that we had a systemic problem that needed to be dealt with, and it was government oversight.
Yeah. And we also look at Massey and the mineral mining scenario that was equally tragic, although more limited in its scope. There's no shortage of evidence, as you're well aware. Congressman, a pleasure, as always, to talk to you soon. I do want to turn